Once again, I'm joined with my good friend Nyiam. We're about to take a deep dive, not just into remote viewing, but into his personal journey that led him to where he is today. And who knows where the path will lead us. Nyiam always has some deep, profound philosophical insights to share with us. And I'm looking forward to having another conversation with him. Nyiam, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Really good. I'm glad to have you back on. We just finished up, I think, a really good discussion talking about a variety of different things, remote viewing. But tonight I'd like to get your background and just dive a little bit deeper. I know a lot of us are interested in the journey, how we get from the beginning stages of, hey, the world seems kind of different to getting to the level that you're at. I'm curious, how did this all start for you? What's the earliest, memory you have of kind of being curious and wanting to explore things?
The I guess the one of the first points that I can at least say that I felt like something was changing for me was in my late high school years,
Mm-hmm.
and really it was I was kind of just discovering the whole idea of, I guess, consciousness. I mean, we
Yeah.
don't really learn about that. They don't
Mm-hmm.
really teach you much about that in school. So I was reading books like The Master Key System. I remember
Mm-hmm.
read that one, and that kind of just blew my mind. Uh, the idea that you could visualize something or reaffirm something in your
Right.
mind, and it actually could cause a change in your life. So
Yeah.
I was really dabbling. Oh, another one was The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murray. That book.
Mm-hmm.
Reading things like that in a pursuit to make my life better. That's really what I
Mm-hmm.
was focused on at that time. Not really, trying to be psychic or do remote viewing or anything like that. It was more
Right.
of what can I do to improve my life. And so, meditation, reading. I was reading a lot of different books at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But Master Key System was definitely one of those books that I guess I guess I had an epiphany. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was one of those moments where it was like something really clicked or changed, where it was like I finally, I guess, changed my outlook
Right.
on life. I've figured that I can actually make a change, or I can actually do something about this. Um, and that led to, I guess, that opened the floodgates to other concepts that I wouldn't
Right.
have had interest in before, right?
It
Because
gave
they
you it
just,
gave you a foundation, right? To be
yeah,
prepared to
yeah,
even understand what the other stuff was. Not to interrupt, but it reminds me of like even somebody like Tony Robbins and talks about like he wanted to change his life. So he just started reading books about successful people. And that gave him that platform to kind of stand on and then learn the next level of ththings, to go out there. It gives you more questions to ask, I think, when you start getting that foundation down, that call that you had.
yeah. When you first start, you don't even know what questions are
Right.
possible to ask. That's what it's like. It's like
Yeah.
you don't have enough information to know where you're gonna go.
It's
So,
like you go to the bookstore and say, all right, where's that magic book that's going to just pop out and to be the one that I need? And you usually find it. You usually find that
oh,
book every time you go.
I've done that many times. I've gone to
Yeah.
the bookstore and
Yep.
just wait for certain books to call out to me, and I read
Yeah.
them, and yeah, they can change your life. I
That's
mean,
how I spent my 20s. I remember.
reading is one of the most powerful things. And reading, not just short little, kind of like today's
Right.
reading is like reading these short little clips and stuff like that,
Right.
but like
No.
really reading something that someone poured their heart and their life experience into,
Yeah.
and taking that in and processing that. Another book I read around that time was The Holographic Universe by
Mm,
Michael Talbot,
yeah.
and that was just I mean, that just flipped everything
It
upside
changes you,
down.
right? I
Yeah,
think books change you. They become a part of you. You may not retain 100% of everything that you read, but it gives you a different perspective of things going, oh, it's not just the way that I see it. And again, it opens you up, I think, to new possibilities.
yeah, it opens the door to places that weren't accessible,
Yeah.
to you before, for good or for bad. I mean, I'm not saying
Right.
every, yeah, you read some things and they don't turn out to
Right.
help you or be that useful, but
Right.
you gotta kiss a couple frogs before you find the prince, so to speak.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah,
Right. Right.
you're gonna have to read a whole bunch of stuff, and you're
Hmm.
gonna find the good stuff in there eventually.
Right.
And Pierre Berman Boehm, their model of the universe, he talked about in there, the holographic viewpoint, or how everything is like a waveform in one state
Hmm.
and has to be kind of enfolded and enfolded and processed, to be perceived.
Right.
I mean, coming from a materialist type education, which most of us are brought up in,
Right.
those aren't things you even think of. Like you really are changing the way you see the world. Like
Hmm.
from everything separate and everything is just the way it is, and how am I going to be able to possibly do this, to everything's connected, and what's happening in here
Right.
actually has a chance to affect and change,
Yeah.
change my reality. So it really does have a profound difference on your life. Certain information that you can take in.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
start to see the synchronicity of simple things and how it ties into all of these bigger pictures. And that really makes you handle, I think, life's challenges differently too. It's like, all right, I'm going through this hard thing, but if history, is any indicator, this is going to lead me somewhere else, maybe somewhere better, or to a new path that I need to explore. And it helps you better navigate things, I think, once you start to reach that level of understanding.
Yeah, I agree. Um, and with questioning reality comes, you kind of unlearn the things that you've been taught. So now you have to
Yeah.
kind of start replacing. You have to
Right.
start replacing those things with things that make more sense. And
Hmm.
so that came with, um, what they call conspiracy theories and
Right.
things like that. Kind of re looking back at things the stories that you've been told in your life, and kind of
Right.
reanalyzing them with a different perspective.
With different lens. Yeah.
Yeah, and things, whether it's like 9/11,
Hmm.
all the ones that we've all been through.
Yeah. All the
Um,
big things, and even the old, biblical stories, you go back and you look at them through a different lens as
yeah,
well, and everything
exactly.
has
Yeah.
new meanings through those new eyes.
Yeah. So you begin to question and start thinking for yourself, which
Hmm.
is another big change, right?
Right.
We're on autopilot. If you don't, some people are still on autopilot,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
don't know it. So
Right.
you kind of, the locus of perception or control kind of comes more into your arena,
Right.
and so you have a little bit of separation from the information that you get. So it's not just it comes to you and then you just agree with it or you just go
Right.
along
You
with
just
it. It's
accept
more
it.
like you have a little bit of time there where you're saying, oh well, does that make sense? Or you
Right.
know you don't do that before.
Hmm.
Some people still don't do that. So
No, they just accept it. I mean, I've worked with people over the years where if the boss says it, this is what we're going to do, and it's the right thing, and I got to do what the boss says, and I'm sitting there like, yeah, but it's a dumb idea. Like we're not going to do this. Let's think for ourselves outside the box and really solve this problem. But there's some people they just can't break out of that, out of that mindset. It's hard.
yeah, yeah. So and a lot of that's laid, foundation is laid when we're children, right? Because you,
Yeah.
you spend your whole childhood listening to
Yeah.
adults and authority
Hmm.
figures. So, and
Hmm.
the whole schooling system kind of reinforces that to a certain
Yeah.
degree. So,
Hmm.
becoming an adult, basically, mentally becoming an adult,
Right.
to where you process the world in a different way.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it led to me kind of relooking over all those events, and the internet was a big part of that because
Hmm.
I mean, you're not going to read back then, you're not going to read about 9/11 in a
No.
book, right? Yeah, you're not going
Right.
to read about
Right.
these things. You're going to have to try and you're going to find that the internet was the only place where you're really going to find other people talking about this or writing about this or videos about
And
these kind of
rapidly,
things.
right? Like because back in the bookstore days, everyone takes a while. I'm a slow reader, And then you don't always have the money. You don't have the time to get out to the bookstore all the time to get stuff. Once the internet hit and people, especially, and then throw YouTube into the mix. I mean, that's
Oh yeah.
in some ways that's when it went all downhill, but
Oh yeah.
also, you know, in the earlier, even 10, 15 years ago, there was really good blogs and videos that were out there that even if they weren't solid information, like you said, it changed your perspective and it got you thinking about things in a different way. Like even flat Earth. Not that I'm a flat earther, but it caused me to stop for a minute and think about all the things, all these anomalies that they talk about, which I think there's some valid anomalies there. I don't think it means the Earth is flat, but it changed my perspective and it opened me up to different possibilities.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, to be able to reserve judgment
Mm-hmm.
and kind of play with an idea
Yeah.
and consider it, that's a skill that people don't have. So, and that's a very powerful thing. I mean, if I wasn't able to do that, you could never get into remote viewing, you know what I mean?
Right.
And things like
Right.
this. If you can't play with an idea without identifying with it, you know what I mean? Without making it, the truth, or, you know what I mean? Your
Yeah.
identity, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, um,
You see
the
that though,
internet. Oh
not to
yeah.
interrupt, but you see,
Yeah.
I think people get caught in the dogma of certain levels. Like they read this and this is it. This is how the world is. And this is what and you hear them reciting. It's like they're just reciting biblical verses of the new age, whatever conspiracy lore is right now. Because they just get so caught up in it. I mean, it's easy to, I mean, it's fascinating stuff, but I think keeping that open mind is key.
Yeah. I think we have a psychological aspect that the reason why religion has played such a big role in
Mm-hmm.
humanity is because we have a part of us that wants answers, and it
Mm-hmm.
likes kind of like a structured
Yeah.
story, and something that answers all these things for us.
Right.
So there's a part of us that will latch on to us, to belief systems, or certain types of information, and once it feels right with us, we'll stay there, and we'll just repeat those things over and over again.
Right.
But I mean, if you've been studying in these areas long enough, you know that there's always more. You know that
Right.
reality, you don't know. You
Mm-hmm.
don't
As
know.
soon as you say
Yeah,
then it all collapses and the ground falls out
exactly.
from under you again. I stopped saying I
Exactly.
know a long time ago.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's you know, belief is like the enemy of knowing, you know what I mean? Things like that.
Right.
It's like, yeah, I'm totally okay with saying,
I don't
what
know.
I don't
Here's
know what reality is. I don't know
here's what I
what,
think right now, but in a
yeah,
week that's
exactly.
probably going to be very different.
Yeah, it's like that's what I was saying in our last talk. You have to have a
Hmm.
certain mystic approach
Right.
to reality, if because you're gonna get caught in these little logical traps and things
Right.
like that. And our
Hmm.
logic, it can't grasp the greater scope of reality. And
Right.
people hate to hear that, because we like to think that we're gonna have it all solved and we're gonna have it
Right.
all figured out and things like that. But there really is a bizarre, beyond our comprehension
Hmm.
and conceptual framework. There really is something beyond all that
Yeah.
and I think that's a part of the mystery of life, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So you got to humble yourself,
Yeah.
yeah, we got
Hmm.
to humble ourselves, and you got to
Yeah.
be
You're right.
okay with some things, not knowing the full answer, but slowly progressing, you know what I mean? You're progressing towards
Agreed.
through your experience,
Yeah.
knowing things. Yeah.
And I'd say I'd be probably disappointed if I reached a point where I did know, like as much as you want to know, because I think it's this question that keeps you going. I want to learn more. I want to explore more. If I knew everything, why would I keep trying? Why would I keep going? Right? It's that not knowing. I think that is a real gift that keeps you wanting to learn and develop.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where, certain belief systems limit people, because,
Hmm.
whether it's, let's say it's a religious connotation, um, they might feel that a certain, this book or that book has all the
Right.
answers, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? And it's like, to really think that, I mean, that's, I don't
and
know what to say
and they
about that.
process through that lens. I have some friends who are very religious, and anytime something happens, they're processing it through the lens of this is what God wanted, this is God's will. And I process very differently. And I'm thinking, well, I think there's other variables. Nope, it was God's will, and this is it. Which is, it's fine. That's your belief, but it keeps you thinking and processing things here, and you might be missing these other things that are also happening in
Yeah.
conjunction with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
think
you're
it's,
reading books. I'm sorry. You're reading books. You're learning. You're questioning the world. And so how's this going? Where's this leading for you as you're going through that process?
well, I guess it started taking me into things that, the meditation, the
Yeah.
visualization. One of the things that I got interested in was silva mind control,
Mm.
which is a visualization techniques, kind of like an NLP based practice
Hmm.
that would allow you to like reprogram, your brain, or bring about certain things. Um, and I got really interested in that, but I could never. I guess I didn't see the practical use of it completely. You know what I mean? It was
Right.
kind of like all in my head, so to speak. Like I was getting benefits from it, but I didn't know if I didn't know how to apply it in the real world, so to speak.
How
So,
was how was it benefiting you at that time? What were you seeing?
I was able to, visualize myself in better situations, and
Mm.
overcome traumas and things like
Right.
that. Handle things without, drinking, or drugs and
Gotcha.
things like that.
Right.
So it was helping me process information in a more healthy way. Um, and then I read about, well, I'd actually read about remote viewing long before that. When I was in,
Yeah.
I was in grade 4 the first time I read about remote viewing.
Fourth grade.
Yeah, it was Courtney Brown's book,
Yeah, that was my first one too.
Cosmic Voyagers. I think it was
Yep.
that one,
Yeah, that
and
book
it went
floored
over
me.
my head at that point. I didn't.
In fourth grade, I can see why.
Yeah, yeah, and his book was very much talking about his UFO experiences with remote
Right.
viewing, right?
Right.
So it felt very science fiction, reading at that point. But then more closer to this period in my life, when I was re-looking at events, 9/11, things like that, I read about the Stargate. Somehow I read
Hmm.
about the Stargate project, and that was interesting to me because I'd read about Robert Monroe,
Hmm.
and I tried out of body experiences, and tried to do those kind of things. So reading about Stargate and finding out that it was like you sit down with a piece of paper,
Hmm.
and you're awake and you can do this, that kind of piqued my interest, because that felt more practical in real life. You know what I mean? As
Yeah.
opposed to just a visualization technique or trying to reprogram myself. This felt like more objective. There was an
Hmm.
objective aspect to it.
You can get different, more tangible results, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, whereas like lucid dreaming or out of
Yeah.
body experience, it can be very subjective. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I had this
Uh-huh.
dream and I did these things, but where's the parallel in the outside world, right?
Yeah. I spent
So
many hours in my youth trying to explore those realities. A lot of failed attempts too when I was younger.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, reading about uh the Stargate project,
Hmm.
that piqued my interest again, and tied back to the whole, the illusion,
Right.
the idea of an illusion, seeing through an illusion.
Right.
So I tried remote viewing to see if it was real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not to get good at it or anything like that. I just wanted
Right.
to know, am I capable? Is this possible? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Can I perceive something that's hidden? Because there's tons of magic tricks that are set
Hmm.
up to make it look like you do that, right? Like, oh, I
Right.
can tell you what car your card is and things like that.
Right.
But,
Right.
this was claiming to be the real deal. So I had
Hmm.
to, that this was just me investigating something like I investigated anything else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Trying to find out, is this the truth? Is any truth or facts to this? And
Hmm.
so I just started trying it on my own. You know what I mean? Getting someone to cut a page out of a magazine and trying to perceive the colors and things like that.
Yeah.
And I was maybe around 18 or something when I first really tried it. And, I convinced myself it was real. And, I wasn't doing anything phenomenal. It was very low
Right.
level, basic things, but I could see that there was something to it. You know what I
There's
mean? I
something
wasn't,
there. Yeah.
yeah, I was, and I wasn't like gaslighting myself. I wasn't bullshitting myself. Like,
Right.
I was being very honest with
Yeah.
myself. Like, I could see there was something there, but
Hmm.
it didn't. I guess I just didn't have the time. I didn't have the focus at that point in my life to keep doing it. It was kind of like,
Well, at
wow. 18,
18, it's tough to get that. I don't think your mind's mature enough at 18.
Yeah,
Not the
yeah.
average
I was
person.
kind of like, wow, this is cool, this is
Right.
real. But I'm gonna go play sports and I'm gonna go
Right.
hang out with
Go
my
be a kid.
friends and yeah, I'm gonna
Right.
do kid stuff. So
Hmm.
it kind of just went on the back burner at that point in my life. And it wasn't until a couple of years later where at this point I had I do music and
Hmm.
art, so I had a studio, and I had spending a lot of time by myself in my studio. And so I got back into reading a lot. I mean, I was
Hmm.
buying books on books, and spending more time by myself. And around that time is when I started
Hmm.
seeing Farsight videos,
Yeah.
and that kind of clicked me back to my experiences before. And I said, then that's when I realized, like, oh, that's remote viewing. Like, now I saw someone else doing it, whereas before I was just doing whatever half-assed thing I was, doing off what I read
Right.
on the internet. Now I
Right.
saw people doing it professionally, producing high level data.
Yeah.
And then I realized, like, wow, that's an art form. Like, that's what it looks
Yeah.
like for real. And
Hmm.
so I started to kind of take it more seriously, and had to, I wanted to just learn how to be better at it, not really
Hmm.
to make money or anything or get noticed or anything like that.
Yeah.
It was just fascinating to me,
Right.
that whole, yeah. How is that possible? How does it work? How does
It's
it feel?
it's mind. We were talking earlier just how mind blowing it was watching Dick and Daz
Yeah.
just do it. Like, oh, you're going to predict the future. Okay, I can't wait to, watch this fail. And then it didn't. Month after month, they kept getting these stories, and you're watching the news, like going, "Where's? Oh, that's it. That's we knew that was gonna." Like, I would go like, "Here's what's gonna happen next month." Trying to ride on their coattails after watching, and then it comes out in the news, and it's like, "Holy shit, they really did it."
Yeah. Yeah. So I just kind of became obsessed with,
Hmm.
I kind of, at that point in my life, I was already, just the way, the way my mentality was. And I was isolated from from people at this point in my life.
Right.
I didn't like going to the movies and going out and hanging out. Like, at this point in my
Right.
life, I was more like, yeah, I'm gonna stay in here. I'm gonna make music, or I'm gonna do art. I'm gonna read books.
Right.
I was very uh against the mainstream media and things like that. So, I didn't
Right.
like to watch TV, and those things just didn't really interest me. So, to me, this was something worthy of my time, right? This was like,
Yeah.
this is something worth putting my focus on. I don't want to go to the movies. I don't want to watch this TV show that everyone's
He's talking
watching. You
about.
know what I
Right.
mean? Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. So I kind of had a very super hyper focused intention to really develop this skill. And
Hmm.
I started doing the paper sessions, and eventually I started working on video because, you know, I, to me, like I said before, to me, looking at the paper session is like reading a stat sheet. It's
Yeah.
not,
It's not
you're
too
not,
exciting.
yeah. And you're not seeing it in real life. You're not seeing really what happened. I mean, when I think
Right.
of a scientific experiment, I think of seeing it really happen, right?
Hmm.
Not just written of what someone, the written result after. So I became fascinated with capturing those moments in
Right.
real time. I wanted to
Yeah.
videotape it and see it that moment that is really happening, what does that look like? What does that feel like? And so, I started videotaping myself and started posting on YouTube just to have a record of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I really wasn't expecting anyone to care about it or watch it or anything like that. It was just passion. It was just a passion project.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just
And
kept doing.
where did you learn, like, what style was this, HRVG at this point, or?
No, this was, I'd read everything. I had read
Okay.
everything out there. I got Daz Smith's CRV book. I
Right.
read the
Mm-hmm.
military manuals online. I read the open source. I read the TDS. The
Mm-hmm.
TRV videos. I everything I could find.
Right.
I read and I tried. And so at that point, when I started doing videos, I was doing like a CRV style
Yeah.
remote viewing. And yeah, I started getting pretty good at it, to the point where
Mm-hmm.
I could do a video and I could share it. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be
Right.
embarrassed to post it, and
Right.
someone else could watch it and say, wow, it looks like you got a good hit there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So from there, I was just, after a couple of years of doing that, I started to feel like almost like a plateau. You know what I mean? I almost felt like,
Yeah.
is this how far it goes? You know what I mean? Is
Right.
this, so I had to kind of reevaluate, well, what I was doing, and
Mm-hmm.
go back to the drawing board and try and learn more skills, and advance my techniques. And around that time, Courtney Brown contacted me. He
Mm-hmm.
saw my YouTube videos, and he contacted me, and we were talking, and he trained me in some SRV
Mm-hmm.
protocols, and I did some videos for him at that time. Those never came out. Those were
Mm.
never published, but
Right.
um yeah, I was working with Courtney Brown for a bit, which was, to me, that was just,
Yeah.
I didn't ever think that was going to happen. Like, Courtney Brown's book was the first thing I ever read about remote
Yeah.
viewing. So this
Yep.
is like how many years later now he's emailing me saying,
Yeah.
to do this video for me. And through him, that's how I really got in contact with Dick Algeier,
Yeah.
because Daz and Dick were working with him around that same time.
Right.
And yeah, he introduced me to Dick, and I'd seen Dick's work and it was just completely blown away
Right.
for years, seeing his work. And like I told you, I'd read everything I could find, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I saw him working, I was like, what is this? You know what I mean? What is he doing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I thought I read everything.
Right.
I thought I'd seen it all. And here's
Right.
this guy doing something that I never seen
Never saw
before.
before. Right.
Yeah. So I had to find out. I had to learn. And so yeah, he kind of mentored me from there. And it was many years of kind of like a phase where I didn't really post videos or do anything online, because I was just trying to learn and integrate the new skills
Right.
and become proficient.
Right.
And things in life,
Mm-hmm.
as well, right? So um and yeah, I just really, really put a lot of time, literally had, locked myself up in this studio.
Yeah.
I would sleep on the floor and wake up at 7 a.m. and I would do remote viewing first thing in the morning.
Right.
I do that all the time. Before I even eat, I would get up at 6 in the
Yep.
morning and do remote viewing sessions
Yeah. That's when I
and
like to
things like
do it
that.
first
Yeah.
thing.
So it took, yeah, I'd say, it took me like maybe from the time I first started remote viewing,
Mm-hmm.
to got to the point where I would say, I was decent. Yeah, it was a good like 5 years, maybe six
Yeah.
years before I would say that I was like somewhat satisfied with the result that I was getting. Um, so it's like it takes a lot of development and
Takes a lot
time.
of time, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you're not
yeah,
going to be, even if you're a natural intuitive, to learn the process, it's going to take a while to get the structure down in the feel for it. Definitely years.
Yeah, and even once you do, you don't know what you're gonna get. You don't know what's gonna happen the next time. You could
Mm-hmm.
still miss a target. So it's not. It's
Yeah.
like the greatest sports players. Steph Curry, he still misses the 3-point shot. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's like you gotta. There's a human element to this, right? Yeah.
Well,
So
what's Dick say? Some days chicken, some days feathers. He says that when he
yeah,
has an off
yeah,
day, you
yeah.
know?
So it's like it's like you gotta tame your expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not omniscience. It's not knowing
Right.
everything all at once.
Right.
It's a skill set that allows you to manage and control certain impulses and give responses. And if you train yourself good enough and you execute the format, then you can get a good result because
Right.
you're working within certain constraints that stop your imagination or your thought process from kicking in and ruining it. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really about reformatting the way you perceive for that time while you're working a remote viewing session. You're not using your normal way of interacting with reality. You're setting
Mm-hmm.
up a certain condition that
Right.
allows your intuition to shine.
Is there anything specific that you do to help yourself get into that mindset, prior to a session?
I used to do like a 10-minute meditation,
Mm-hmm.
before I start a session, but I find that I don't really have to do that much anymore. I guess it's more of like an
Yeah.
entrainment.
You just tap right into
Um,
it.
yeah, I can kind of get to that level, and the style that I use for remote viewing, it's meant to start in a beta.
Mm-hmm.
It's meant to start in a beta brainwave state. So
Okay.
you start fully awake and aware,
Mm-hmm.
and then you slowly work your way down into alpha, and then in more of a theta state at the end. So it's kind of just been integrated into the way I work.
Yeah.
But definitely, for someone who's not and maybe doesn't have as much experience with managing their awareness, then yeah, meditations and breathing
Yeah.
exercises can definitely kind of stop the chatter, reduce the brain chatter and stuff like that.
I think that's the biggest complaint I hear from people is, oh, I can't meditate. My mind just runs. And, what advice do you have for people who have that difficulty meditating?
It's there's multiple things that I would say personally
Mm-hmm.
would help me. um Transcendental meditation was one
Mm-hmm.
technique that really helped because it gives your chatter part of your brain something to
Right.
do while you
Right.
meditate. um Another one is, a lot of people don't take this into consideration, but your diet and the things you
Mm-hmm.
consume,
Mm-hmm.
they have effect on your awareness. So
Right.
if you ever eaten certain psychedelics, that's the extreme version. You
Yeah.
notice right away there's something going on. But a lot of
Right.
the foods that we eat on a regular and on an everyday basis also have subtle effects on your
Mm-hmm.
awareness. And so not eating certain things can help your kind of like the noise floor of your awareness,
Mm-hmm.
reduce noise, and things like that. Like 11 years ago, I mean, I went vegetarian.
Mm-hmm.
I'd read about it many times before that, lots of psychics and people that practice intuition recommend a vegetarian diet.
Mm-hmm.
But um it's very hard to change
Yeah.
diet. I
Yeah.
mean, that's something that we get locked into, and it's like drugs. Food is like drugs, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like so. It took a lot of research and willpower to to get myself over that. Uh, you know, but
Well,
yeah,
and discipline too. I mean, think about what that requires and think about the mental discipline you need and the structure you need in remote viewing. I mean, that's almost, I'd say, a part of training as well, is mastering your control over your senses, your urges, and your desires, right? Having that level of discipline to then get your mind in the right state to do whatever it is you need to do. I mean, I can see that being a huge asset for remote viewing.
bingo, bingo. If you can control what you eat, you have a
Yeah.
much better chance of controlling, your other
Yeah.
impulses. And so, because that's one of our most deep rooted survival instincts, right? It's like, I
Mm-hmm.
want to eat this. I
Mm-hmm.
want to eat. I want to do this. So
Right.
it all comes with self control and
Yeah.
learning how to manage your body and your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so that I'd say that was a major thing for me, going vegetarian, kind of not only the management,
Mm-hmm.
discipline part of it, but whatever kind of changes that it makes in your body and your mind. I mean, I just mental clarity was different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The things that I would think about on a daily basis kind of changed. You know what I mean?
Really.
I'd say it's very similar to like seeing everything through the materialist paradigm and then
Mm-hmm.
seeing it through more of a connected paradigm. It's kind of a similar thing that happens with food where
Mm.
you're in a survival mind state. I felt like I was always in a survival type of mind state. And then once
Right.
I became vegetarian, it wasn't like that anymore.
Mm.
Food doesn't run my life the same way as before. I'm not victim to I'm not subject to my
The
desires for
cravings and
food and stuff
yeah.
like that. Yeah. So it's definitely, it's hard to explain, but it's a profound
I
change.
I hear. I mean, I haven't gone that route for years. I've wanted to explore it. I haven't had. I've got three kids and a job. Like I just don't have time right now. Um, but hearing it in that perspective is it makes a lot of sense to me right now. And then to have that freedom, like I think about just like cravings, searching for, and really it's a dopamine fix that for me that I'm looking for with certain foods. Um, and to be able to step away, I mean, that's huge to be able to have power over that. That's a fascinating approach. I'm going to explore that. I'm not ready for it yet, Nyiam, but when I am, I'll definitely give you a call and want tips
Baby
on that.
steps, baby steps.
Yeah, that's it. Baby steps. All right.
Yeah, definitely didn't happen overnight. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they say when you go cold turkey and just do it right away, it never sticks. You really have to. You got to put a whole, it's a whole lifestyle change, really.
Yeah, yeah,
Eating out, going, you have to put a lot more planning, I would imagine. Wow.
yeah. It's a game changer. Yeah.
Okay. So you've changed your diet. You've gotten some significant training. You're starting to get good after, 5 or 6 years. You're getting some confidence. You've worked with Courtney. Now Dick Allgaier is training you. And then where are you going from there after you learned HRVG?
And then I started once I got to a level where I wouldn't embarrass myself doing HRVG on video. I
Right.
started making videos again. Um, and really, I mean, even when I was doing more CRV style remote viewing, a lot of my most profound moments have been on a whiteboard on
Yeah.
video. You know what I mean? So there's something different about working on the whiteboard. It becomes more of a performance art.
Yeah.
And maybe that opens up more of your the intuition and the body intelligence since you're
Mm-hmm.
standing and you're engaged and you're
Right.
more animated. And so I started, I had friends that would pick targets for me and I'd
Mm-hmm.
work them on video. I would share them. And then Farsight and and crypto viewing came
Mm-hmm.
around that time, and I wasn't a part of it. But I'd been thinking, I was always thinking like, oh, what if someone remote viewed cryptos? Like that would be interesting, because that
Yeah.
was around that time cryptos were getting big, and then one
Yeah.
day I go online and I see Dick post a video like, oh, crypto viewing, and I was like, oh shit, I'm
Yeah.
like, they're doing it. I was like, that's
Yeah.
amazing. And yeah, I'd been watching Edward Riordan for years online as
Yeah.
well. You know what I mean? And I've probably seen every single one of his videos like 10 times
Right.
over. And
Yeah.
so it was Dick and Daz and Edward. These were the guys I'd been, you know, watching like a hawk for
Right.
years.
Yeah. Like your role
Um
models.
yeah, exactly. So
Mm-hmm.
it was like, wow. And that kind of it kind of gave me hope that it's like remote viewing might be going somewhere. I mean, it's not just
Right.
going to be something on a forum that people talk about in the back
Right.
of a forum on some channel somewhere.
Right.
Um, and so I just kept posting. And once
Mm-hmm.
they started doing, I saw the world events that they were doing. They were
Right.
started doing world events, and I said, okay, I'm gonna do world events. So I
Right.
started doing trying to see the month ahead, and I probably did that for like a year and a half. Every month on YouTube, I would post my
Right.
session and do a recap the next month of what was the good data.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people started subscribing and watching that portion of my
Right.
work.
Right.
And Dick, every once in a while, Dick would send me, or Daz would send me like an ARV project to
Mm-hmm.
work, and things like that. For every once in a while, they would send me one for crypto viewing, and I would like we did a gold forecast.
Mm-hmm.
One of them I did was what is the price of gold going to be. So I was working one or two, three targets here or there, and I would get paid
Right.
for it. And so I
Mm-hmm.
was like, this is incredible. I mean,
Yeah, that's the
I never
dream,
thought,
man. That's
yeah, I never thought I'd make money doing remote viewing. So
mm-hmm.
I would just always send them my best work. I would send
Yeah.
Dick my best work, and I guess after a couple years, um, things were expanding, and he eventually gave me a spot there. So
Yeah.
really, it was just persistence and keeping my passion and my drive for the art just going is really, I guess, what led me to where I am now.
I think that's an awesome journey. I think there's a lot of common threads that I think a lot of people watching will have with it in terms of people who are just like we talked about, searching for those answers, searching to understand, on that quest for the experience and for the knowledge. And I think that's a great example. And you hear it in Edward's stories and in Daz's and in Dick's. It was just that desire to, well, what else can I do with this? What else can I learn about this? You read all the books and you get the training, and then you just practice, practice, practice. And I think the other piece is putting your work out there. Um, I think there's something to be gained from that, from putting it on display, right or wrong, the good and the bad. Here's what I'm doing here. I think there's a lot of growth that comes from that as well, in this field of remote viewing, is being able to present your work regardless of if you're on or not.
Yeah, the feedback loop. Like I have a website, and it's called the feedback loop,
Mm-hmm.
and I call it that because I think that's the most important aspect if you want to improve
Yeah.
as a remote viewer. You need to complete that circuit so many
Yep.
times, whether you're right or wrong. You got to keep feeding that information back,
Right.
and that's how you kind of reformat and correct the process,
Mm-hmm.
um, and get better over time. I mean, I guess that's a lot of remote viewing in the public eye is always like the mystery type viewing. You know what I mean? Like, oh, what
Right.
happened in this image, or what's this secret thing over here? But
Right.
really, if you want to get good at remote viewing, you got to work what people would call boring things. You know what I mean? Just
Right.
like your everyday structure, water, land,
Yeah.
people. You got to master that, and then that's how you really get good at remote viewing. Getting those kind of things wrong over and
It's the
over and over again.
foundation, right? And then getting,
Yeah.
because you're right that, I mean, I just think about when we would do our look backs, right? We work a crypto target, and a year later we'd go back and we go over the data and we compare it and see, like, how do we do? How did the charts work out? How did the predictions work out and everything? Um, and those sessions, when you go back, seem to be the better ones. They seem to be the ones where Dick was like, "Hey, I bought that a week before I was supposed to do the session," and so I think that feedback piece is hugely important on a variety of levels, for your own development.
Yeah. It's like if you're on a boat, or, like a GPS, let's say, for example, it's pointing you in a certain direction, or you're
Mm-hmm.
driving in a certain direction. And the GPS is using a feedback because it's taking in where you're going. So wherever you're driving, it's taking that information and it's feeding it back in. And
Mm-hmm.
then the system is telling you where to go next. Right. So that's like
Yeah.
a feedback loop. The output becomes the input. And so it self corrects. So
Yeah.
there's like a self correcting mechanism in remote viewing, I believe, but you have to keep feeding it in order
Right.
to get it started. So if you never
Mm-hmm.
work verifiable regular
Right.
everyday targets and kind of cut your teeth on those, you're
Hmm.
never going to get that foundation that lets you say, I know there's something here, or like I know what this
Right.
feels like, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's huge. I mean, I remember even beyond just feedback, just starting with the basic ideogram, right? I remember just doing pages and pages and pages of structure and energy and life forms, all these just over and over to get that communication, that language down, that foundational skill set that really your session builds off of from there. Um,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's hugely valuable.
It's a Most people see the grand finale, right? They see
Right.
the end result and they go, wow, that's an amazing drawing, or look at this data.
Right.
But yeah, they don't necessarily see that how it starts. And that's why, once
Yeah.
again, that video, the video of it happening in real time really puts it in perspective, because you see how it
Right.
starts from nothing, and it becomes, it becomes the great information that we see at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you build on it. That's great, Nyiam. That's an amazing journey. I love that you made it to where you are. I'm thankful for the all the opportunities we've had to work with each other as well. I think it's been a great learning experience for me. We're coming up on the end of our time. Any other thoughts just on anything remote viewing or training that you can put out there for anybody?
Yeah, hoping to, teach some courses in remote viewing in the near
Hmm.
future.
That's right. You're a
Um,
trainer now, right?
yeah, I did my certification for HRVG instruction.
Hmm.
So it's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
But I'm happy that I did it now and not before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've always said to myself, I've had many people message me and say, teach me remote viewing, and over the years, and I never really did, because I want to establish myself
Right.
before I do any of those things. That was always important to me.
Yeah.
Even to get paid for, people always email me and say, work this, I have a target, I'll pay you, work it. And I just, I'm reluctant to do a lot of those things because
Right.
I want to do this right. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I always wanted to do this the right way. And so
Right.
I kind of I let the universe do its thing, and it's
Yeah.
led me here. So I feel more comfortable where I'm at now. And yeah, now to be able to teach, and maybe in combination with FFG,
Yeah.
I think it's a more conducive environment, uh, and
Yeah.
and and we'll reach more people that way.
Well, I think you also waited until you've acquired the wisdom through experience, right? You can read the books and recite what the book says and put a course together, but it's different when you can talk about what the experience is like and how you've problem solved and all the other things you talked about, right? Like changing your diet, trying the different types of meditation, learning this style, learning that style. Like that's what prepares you to be a teacher. And there's people out there that like they'll take one course and like, okay, come learn from me, but they don't have the operational experience, right? Or the all those failures, all those misses that you go through, and then just keep coming back to it and all those valuable lessons. I think that makes you a much better teacher to learn from.
Yeah, I always told myself that I would never take a lesson from somebody who I didn't know could remote view. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
would never just take a lesson because someone's teaching it. Like I would have to
Right.
see and know like their work, and know that they could
Right.
do it at a certain
Right.
level. So, I feel like I'm at that level now where people have seen my work. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So I feel more comfortable to say, okay, I'm teaching. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
don't want to feel like I'm half-assing it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure you won't. I'm sure it's going to be great for your students. They'll be lucky to have you as a teacher. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that, Naeem. Well, it's been great, buddy. I'm glad we got to connect. For these two conversations tonight. And put it out there. For those of you watching, again, I'd love to hear your feedback on your own personal journeys, the things that you've gone through. What parallels do you see to Naeem's journey compared to yours? I know there are many. I think there's common threads that we go through on these spiritual quests for advancement and for knowledge. So please share your comments on whatever platform you're watching. If you'd like to know more about what we do at the Future Forecasting Group, please check us out, futureforecastinggroup.com. Again, futureforecastinggroup.com. You'll see remote viewing at its best with a variety of different targets, not just cryptocurrency and the economy. We look at predictive targets like world events, in addition to the mysterious and the woo-woo, which are also a lot of fun. So, Nyiam, thank you for being my guest again. I greatly appreciate it, and I look forward to our next discussion.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, on behalf of Nyiam and the rest of the Future Forecasting Group, I'm Dennis Nappi II. Thanks for watching.